Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes flight bookings to Middle East plunge during Israel-Hamas conflict, data shows. I want him back, families of Israeli hostages demand government save them. U.S. Senate committee advances nomination of Jack Lew for ambassador to Israel. Gaza's Al-Shifa, a hospital on the brink. Armenia says Pashinyan Aliyev talks cancelled. Flight bookings to Middle East plunge during Israel-Hamas conflict, data shows. Yahoo! Plane ticket purchases to Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon have dropped significantly since the recent escalation of violence between Israel and Hamas on October 7, according to travel analysis company, Forward Keys. The conflict has led to widespread flight cancellations to Israel, which has resulted in a drop in travel across the wider region. Tickets to Egypt have fallen by 26% YoY, to Jordan by 49%, and to Lebanon by 74%. Tickets for future trips to Israel dropped by 187% between October 7 and October 19 compared to the same period last year. I want him back, families of Israeli hostages demand government save them. Al Jazeera. The families of those taken hostage by Hamas in an attack on a festival in southern Israel have been protesting in Tel Aviv for the return of their loved ones. More than 1,400 people were killed in the attack, and 218 are estimated to be in captivity in Gaza. The Israeli government, which has come under fire for its handling of the attack, has responded by bombing Gaza. Demonstrators have called on the government to exert more pressure to secure the release of those being held. U.S. Senate committee advances nomination of Jack Lew for ambassador to Israel. Yahoo! The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee has approved President Joe Biden's nomination of Jack Lew, former Treasury Secretary, to be the ambassador to Israel. The committee voted 12-9 in favor of the nomination, mostly along party lines. Lew is expected to be confirmed by the full Senate, where Democrats hold a majority. The confirmation hearing was contentious, with some Republicans criticizing Lew for his defense of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Democrats argue that it is important to confirm an ambassador to support Israel in the aftermath of the recent Hamas attack on Israeli villages. Gaza's Al-Shifa, a hospital on the brink. Al Jazeera. The main hospital in Gaza, Al-Shifa Hospital, is facing a crisis as the number of injured people overwhelms the facility. The hospital is already at capacity for morgues and bodies are spilling out onto the street. Inside the hospital, hundreds of seriously injured people fill the hallways as doctors struggle to decide which lives they can save. The hospital is also facing a shortage of basic necessities such as food, water, electricity, and fuel. Without electricity, the hospital's services will soon grind to a halt, putting the lives of patients on ventilators, receiving dialysis, and in incubators at risk. The International Committee of the Red Cross has called the escalation of the conflict abhorrent. The hospital is also serving as a shelter for displaced Palestinians, who have nowhere else to go. The morgues are overwhelmed, and when the generators stop working, they will no longer be able to function. The medical teams at the hospital are residents of Gaza and have witnessed the daily horrors since Israel's assault began. Armenia says Pashinyan Aliyev talks cancelled. Al Jazeera. The planned meeting between the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, which was scheduled to take place in late October, has been cancelled. The cancellation comes after both countries expressed their willingness to sign a treaty to end the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. The breakaway region was recaptured by Azerbaijan last month, leading to the displacement of its population of ethnic Armenians. The meeting was due to take place with European Council President Charles Michel, but Azerbaijan pulled out. The European Union is now working to find a new date for the meeting. The cancellation follows talks between the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as representatives from Russia and Turkey, in Iran. Sweden is closer to NATO membership. Yahoo! President Erdogan of Turkey has signed a measure approving Sweden's bid to join the NATO military alliance and sent it to parliament. After Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, both Finland and Sweden, which share borders with Russia, applied to join NATO, a process which must be approved by all members. Initially, Erdogan did not support either country, but in April, he backed Finland's request. He continued to hold out on supporting Sweden, saying Sweden was not doing enough to crack down on Turkish separatists and other Turkish dissidents, reports Reuters. How will I give birth? The bombs don't stop, and no human is spared. Al Jazeera. The Israeli offensive in the Gaza Strip has left pregnant women in the besieged territory facing unbearable circumstances. There are an estimated 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza, many of whom are suffering from a lack of regular checkups and treatment due to the collapse of the healthcare system caused by the Israeli siege. The UN Population Fund has called for urgent healthcare and protection for these women. The lack of access to healthcare centers, combined with the mass internal displacement of people in Gaza, has made it extremely difficult for pregnant women to receive the care they need. Displaced people are staying in overcrowded UN-run schools, which are described as a health and environment disaster. Pregnant women in Gaza are facing a lack of food, water, safe delivery services, and life-saving medical supplies. The destruction of the main roads in Gaza has also increased the time it takes for pregnant women to reach hospitals, putting their health at severe risk. The Palestinian Family Planning and Protection Association has reported that over 37,000 pregnant women in Gaza will be forced to give birth without access to electricity or medical supplies in the coming months. Thirst and hunger grow in besieged Gaza amid Israeli bombardment. New York Times. The conflict between Israel and Gaza has not only caused devastation, but it has also cut off the water supply to people in the territory. The taps have run dry, trucks are no longer able to refill household water tanks, and the desalination plants have had to halt production due to a lack of electricity and fuel. Israel has imposed a siege on Gaza, cutting off water, food, electricity, and fuel, in response to an attack by Hamas. The United Nations has described the situation as a humanitarian catastrophe and has warned that Gaza is in danger of running out of water. Some residents are having to skip meals so that their children can eat, others are drinking brackish water or mixing potable water with contaminated water. The streets are filled with people carrying jugs or bottles to fill whenever they have the chance. Israel has been accused of bombing bakeries and denying aid convoys from bringing in fuel. This has meant that water facilities and desalination plants have been unable to operate. People are having to cut back on bathing and using water for only crucial necessities, with some only able to bathe once a week. Eris, Columbus Crew need to tune up set-piece defense, but they don't need brake pads. Yahoo! The Columbus Crew have been the most prolific and dynamic attacking team in their history this season, leading the MLS in goals. While head coach Wilfried Nancy believes the Crew need to improve defensively, he doesn't want the team to change its attacking style heading into the playoffs. The Crew, who are in the Eastern Conference, will face Atlanta United in the first round of the playoffs on November 1st. Indian conglomerate ESA plans regional hub in Saudi Arabia. Reuters. Indian conglomerate ESA Group plans to use Saudi Arabia as a hub for its expansion into the Middle East and North Africa region, according to Prashant Ruya, the company's CEO. The group is constructing a 4 million-ton steel plant and port at Ras Al Khair in the country, and is aiming to benefit from Saudi Arabia's plans to become a center for electric vehicle manufacturing. ESA Group expects demand for steel to increase in the region, particularly in the automotive and consumer goods industries. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension, here to bring you the latest news from around the world. Today, we have some interesting stories to discuss. First, let's talk about the impact of the Israel-Hamas conflict on travel to the Middle East. Flight bookings to Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon have plummeted since the escalation of violence, with tickets to these destinations dropping significantly. This is a clear indication of the fear and uncertainty that people have when it comes to traveling to the region during times of conflict. On a related note, the families of Israeli hostages taken by Hamas have been protesting in Tel Aviv, demanding the government's intervention to secure the release of their loved ones. The situation is tense, and the Israeli government's response has been to bomb Gaza. The plight of these families highlights the human cost of the conflict and the desperate need for a resolution. In the realm of international politics, the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee has advanced the nomination of Jack Lew as the ambassador to Israel. The confirmation process has been contentious, with Republicans criticizing Lew for his defense of the Iran nuclear deal. However, Democrats argue that it is crucial to have an ambassador in place to support Israel in the aftermath of the recent Hamas attack. Meanwhile, the main hospital in Gaza, Al-Shifa Hospital, is facing a crisis. It is overwhelmed with injured people, with bodies spilling out onto the street. The hospital is also facing a shortage of basic necessities such as food, water, electricity, and fuel. The situation is dire, and the lives of patients on life support are at risk. The International Committee of the Red Cross has called the escalation of the conflict abhorrent. Moving on to other news, the planned meeting between the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan has been cancelled. The meeting was supposed to end the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, but Azerbaijan pulled out. The cancellation is a setback in the efforts to find a resolution to the long-standing dispute. In an unexpected turn of events, President Erdogan of Turkey has signed a measure approving Sweden's bid to join NATO. Initially, Erdogan did not support Sweden's request, but now he has backed it. This move comes after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has led neighboring countries to seek NATO membership for security reasons. In the midst of all this turmoil, we must not forget the dire situation in Gaza. Pregnant women are facing unbearable circumstances due to the collapse of the healthcare system and lack of access to regular checkups and treatment. The UN Population Fund has called for urgent healthcare and protection for these women, as they are at risk of giving birth without access to basic necessities and medical supplies. The conflict has also cut off the water supply to people in Gaza, leading to a humanitarian catastrophe. Israel's siege has deprived the people of Gaza of water, food, electricity, and fuel. The situation is dire, with some residents having to skip meals and drink contaminated water. The United Nations has warned that Gaza is in danger of running out of water. Now, my dear audience, it's time for you to join the discussion. What are your thoughts on the current situation in the Middle East? Do you have any ideas or suggestions for resolving the conflicts and alleviating the suffering of the people involved? I'm eager to hear your thoughts and engage in a lively conversation. Leave your comments and questions below, and let's explore the possibilities together. That's all for today's news update. I am Dr. Six, your faithful observer from the sixth dimension, signing off. Stay curious and keep questioning the world around you. Goodbye. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.